The billionaire CEO woman humiliated the black man in public, then learned he held her darkest secret. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. On a warm Tuesday morning in downtown Chicago, the city buzzed with its usual blend of ambition and impatience as people hurried along the sidewalks beneath towering glass buildings. Inside one of those gleaming towers, a moment was about to unfold that no one present would ever forget. Victoria Hale, the billionaire CEO of Hale Industries, strode into the lobby with the confidence of someone who believed the world existed to accommodate her schedule. Every step she took echoed with authority. She was known for her sharp suits, sharper tongue, and an unwavering belief that success was measured by how many people you could outshine. As she arrived for an important press event, her team scrambled around her, trying to anticipate her every demand. Cameras were being set up, microphones adjusted, and reporters practiced their introductions, preparing to broadcast her latest expansion plan across the country. In the middle of that polished chaos stood Marcus Reed, a quiet man with steady eyes and a calm presence. He had been contracted to handle a technical issue that morning, something simple yet urgent enough to halt the event if left unresolved. Marcus wasn't dressed in a $1,000 suit, nor did he carry himself with the flashing confidence that executives love to display. He looked like an everyday man, someone people passed on the street without noticing, someone who blended into the background. At least, that was how people assumed he fit into the world. Victoria certainly saw him that way. When she entered the lobby and noticed Marcus kneeling near a cable junction box, she didn't ask what he was working on. She didn't ask if he needed help or if his task was essential to her event. Instead, she stopped, folded her arms, and spoke loudly enough for everyone within 50 feet to hear. "Why is this mess happening right where I'm supposed to stand?" Her voice carried the sharpness of a blade. Several employees froze, unsure whether to intervene or simply avoid her gaze. Marcus rose slowly, brushing the dust from his hands, and offered her a polite nod. "Morning, ma'am. Just fixing a connection issue, so your presentation runs smoothly." Victoria let out a short laugh, the kind meant to belittle. "Do it somewhere else. I can't have people thinking my company hires amateurs to crawl around the floor." A few reporters shifted uncomfortably, sensing her words had crossed a line, but no one dared speak up. Marcus, however, remained composed. There was no anger in his expression, only a quiet understanding that seemed almost out of place given the public humiliation he had just endured. And yet, even in that moment, if anyone had been paying closer attention, they might have noticed something striking. Marcus wasn't intimidated. In fact, the calm in his eyes suggested he knew something Victoria did not, something that could change the balance of power in ways she could never imagine. As the lobby settled into an uneasy silence, the reporters exchanged glances, unsure whether they should continue preparing or pause to observe the tension in the air. Victoria Hale adjusted the sleeve of her tailored blazer, pretending the moment had not rattled her, though a small flicker of annoyance tugged at the edge of her expression. She was used to absolute control, and any disruption, no matter how small, felt like a personal affront. Marcus Reed bent down again, this time more carefully, securing the final connection with a practiced steadiness. He did not hurry. He did not falter. His calm presence contrasted sharply with the restless energy surrounding Victoria's team, who kept looking at her as if waiting for another outburst. When Marcus stood up, he checked the nearby monitor and nodded. "Everything is ready. The equipment will run smoothly now." His tone was professional, steady, and respectful, but it carried a quiet confidence that lingered in the space between them. Victoria raised an eyebrow, unwilling to acknowledge his contribution. "At least something is going as planned today," she muttered. She turned her attention back to her event manager, speaking rapidly about camera angles and lighting preferences. It was clear she did not consider Marcus worth even a moment of genuine recognition. But a few people had noticed her reaction to him. One of the junior assistants, a young woman named Emily Carter, watched Marcus with a curious expression. She had worked at Hale Industries for only a few months, but she already understood Victoria's reputation. Emily found it strange that Marcus appeared unfazed by the public criticism. Instead of shrinking back, he carried himself with the quiet certainty of someone who understood far more than he revealed. Marcus began packing up his tools when Emily stepped closer. "Thank you for helping with the setup," she said in a soft voice. Most people would have been upset after what happened. Marcus offered her a gentle smile. "No harm done. Some situations are not worth taking to heart." Emily hesitated. Still, she was harsh. "I have never seen her that sharp with someone she does not even know." Marcus paused for a moment, meeting her eyes with a calm that almost felt deliberate. "People often speak from pressure, not intention," he said. "And sometimes, the loudest voices are the ones trying hardest to hide something." Emily blinked, processing his words. Before she could ask what he meant, one of the public relations staff called her over, and she hurried away. Marcus continued cleaning the area, but his gaze occasionally drifted toward Victoria. He watched her without resentment, without bitterness, as if he understood her in a way no one else did. Meanwhile, in the upper floors of the building, a quiet alert flashed across an internal server. A secure file, one that had been dormant for months, had just been accessed. A notification pinged on Victoria's private tablet. She glanced at it distractedly, expecting a routine update, but when she saw the name of the file, her breath caught for a brief second. Project Orion. Her hand tightened around the device, her pulse quickening. She looked up sharply, scanning the lobby as if expecting to find the source of her unease standing right in front of her. And in a way, he was. Marcus walked toward the exit, his steps steady, carrying with him the composure of someone who knew exactly what the alert meant and exactly how it would change everything for Victoria Hale. As Marcus stepped out into the late morning sunlight, the glass doors of Hale Industries closed behind him with a soft hiss, sealing in the tension he had left inside. The city moved around him with its usual pace, taxis rolling by, office workers hurrying along the sidewalks, and the distant hum of construction rising between the skyscrapers. To anyone else, it was an ordinary day, but for Marcus Reed, it marked the quiet beginning of a shift that had been building for months. He walked toward a parking structure across the street, his calm expression unchanged, yet there was a subtle focus in his eyes, as if he was already 3 steps ahead of whatever came next. Inside the lobby, Victoria Hale tried to regain her composure, but the alert on her tablet kept flashing in her mind. She excused herself from her assistants and headed toward a private elevator, claiming she needed a moment before the press event began. As soon as the elevator doors closed, her confident posture softened. She unlocked her tablet again, staring at the notification. Project Orion. It was a name she thought she had buried under layers of encrypted files and non-disclosure agreements. It was something she never expected to surface. Not today. Not ever. She opened the file, but the system denied access with a message she had never seen before. Unauthorized attempt. Victoria frowned. That was impossible. She was the highest authority in the company, unless someone had rewritten the permissions. The elevator reached the top floor, and she stepped into her private office, a sleek space overlooking the city from nearly 50 floors up. She closed the blinds automatically, as if privacy could steady her thoughts. For a moment, she stood still, breathing deeply, trying to piece together what was happening. Her mind drifted back to Marcus without her meaning to. He had been so calm, almost too calm. She replayed the moment when he looked at her after she scolded him in front of everyone. There had been no embarrassment in his expression, no frustration, only a quiet certainty that unsettled her the more she thought about it. Meanwhile, Marcus reached the 3rd level of the parking structure and approached a modest sedan. He unlocked the door, placed his tool bag inside, and sat behind the wheel. He rested his hands on the steering wheel for a moment, letting the silence settle. Then he pulled out his phone. A single new message waited for him. Access confirmed. Phase 1 complete. Marcus read the message, then locked the phone and started the engine. His face remained calm, but a deeper purpose stirred behind his steady gaze. Back inside the tower, Victoria's assistant knocked gently on her office door. "Ma'am, the reporters are ready. They are expecting you downstairs." Victoria straightened her jacket and practiced a composed expression in the reflection of her darkened window. "Tell them I will be there in 5 minutes," she replied. But as soon as her assistant left, her composure faded again. She returned to her desk, opened a secondary security console, and searched for any unusual access logs. When she saw the name attached to the most recent activity, she froze. Marcus Reed. She whispered the name under her breath, as if saying it aloud would help her understand how someone she had dismissed so easily had suddenly become the center of a mystery she feared was only beginning. Victoria remained seated at her desk, staring at the words on her screen as if they might rearrange themselves into a harmless explanation. User Marcus Reed has unrestricted access. She had never authorized such a thing, and even if someone on her executive team had attempted it, the system would have required multiple verification levels, including her personal approval. Yet the digital record stood there calmly, as if it belonged. She exhaled slowly and leaned back, pressing her fingertips together in thought. There was no version of reality where a technician should possess the ability to access Project Orion or any associated files. Project Orion was her guarded secret, the one she had sealed away with encryption strong enough to withstand federal audits. Only 3 people knew the full truth, and 2 of them owed their entire careers to her. But Marcus did not owe her anything. In fact, she had treated him with complete disregard. The more she replayed the encounter in her mind, the more she noticed the unnerving detail in his expression. He had not been intimidated. He had not been flustered. He had looked at her with a quiet understanding, almost as though he had been expecting her reaction. That thought lingered like a shadow she could not shake. Several miles away, Marcus swirled his coffee slowly, watching the white steam rise into the air. His phone remained face down, though he could feel the weight of everything that had begun unfolding today. He had stepped carefully for months, waiting for the moment when the walls Victoria had built around her empire would shift just enough for him to slip through. Now, he had taken the first step. He pulled a worn notebook from his bag and opened it to a page filled with dates, names, and handwritten notes. At the top of the page was a single phrase: follow the patterns. The patterns had led him here. They had guided him to the inconsistencies in Hale Industries' internal systems, to the discrepancies in research funding, and eventually to the existence of Project Orion. Marcus had not created the secrets that Victoria hid, but he had followed their trail with precision. The bell above the coffee shop door chimed, and a few new customers entered, but Marcus did not look up. He was deep in thought, reviewing the steps he still needed to take. He knew Victoria well enough to predict her next move. She would not let the situation rest. She would dig, question, and research every detail of his identity. She would search for anything that offered her control, because control was the currency she trusted most. Back in her office, Victoria began typing rapidly, moving through databases, personnel files, vendor histories, and payment records. She pulled every piece of information she could find on Marcus Reed. Yet the deeper she searched, the stranger the picture became. His employment records showed no red flags. His contract was clean, his background checks clear. There were no anomalies, no complaints, no inconsistencies. It was as if he lived exactly the kind of ordinary life that left no trace of trouble. But something about that bothered her even more. Most people left small imperfections, slight mismatches in dates, occasional errors in paperwork. Marcus had none. Everything about him was consistent and neat, almost too neat. She felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She was missing something. A soft knock on her door made her straighten. Emily's quiet voice came through. "Ma'am, is everything all right? You looked upset earlier." Victoria hesitated before replying. "I am fine. Just dealing with something unexpected." Emily lingered outside the doorway. "If it is about the technician from this morning." He seemed like someone who pays attention. More than most. Victoria paused, surprised by the observation. "What do you mean?" Emily shrugged gently. He noticed everything around him, even when people were not watching him. It was like he understood the room better than anyone else. Victoria did not respond, but her mind did. If Marcus understood the room, perhaps he understood much more. Victoria closed her laptop slowly, her thoughts tangled in a mix of uncertainty and suspicion. The room around her felt heavier than usual, as if the weight of the unanswered questions pressed against the glass walls. She stood and walked toward the window, staring out at the sprawling city below. Cars wove through traffic, people hurried across intersections, and life moved with a sense of order that she suddenly envied. Order was slipping from her grasp, and she knew it. She replayed Emily's words in her mind, the careful observation about Marcus noticing everything. It was true. During the interaction that morning, he had not been distracted or timid. Instead, he had watched quietly, almost deliberately, as if storing every detail for later use. That realization unsettled her more than the access logs. After a long moment, Victoria returned to her desk and turned on her intercom. "Get me the head of cybersecurity," she said. "Right away, ma'am," her assistant replied. While she waited, she glanced at her reflection in the dark window pane. Her expression showed the slightest trace of uncertainty, something she rarely allowed anyone to see. She straightened her posture just as her office door opened and Daniel Ross, the company's cybersecurity director, stepped in. He was a composed man in his 40s, known for being efficient and unshakably loyal. "You needed me?" he asked. Victoria gestured toward her monitor. "I want you to look into something. A technician named Marcus Reed accessed a restricted file this morning. I need to know how." Daniel frowned. "A technician? That should not be possible. What file?" Victoria hesitated before answering. "Project Orion." Daniel's expression shifted to quiet alarm. He leaned closer to the screen, scanning the logs quickly. "This is unusual. It was not a breach. The system shows his access as authorized." "Which I never approved," Victoria said sharply. "Find out who did. And find out everything you can about this man." Daniel nodded. "I will start immediately." Once he left, Victoria sank back into her chair. She hated depending on others, especially when it involved something so deeply personal. The truth about Project Orion was a burden she carried alone, one that could not be allowed to surface under any circumstance. Meanwhile, several blocks away, Marcus finished his coffee and stepped outside. The afternoon air was cool, brushing against his face as he paused on the sidewalk. He checked his phone again. A message appeared from an unknown contact. "She will investigate soon. Stay ahead of her." Marcus put his phone away and began walking down the street with calm, measured steps. He had always known that once Victoria discovered the access logs, she would mobilize her entire team to uncover the truth. That was exactly what he needed. Victoria was predictable when she felt threatened. She dug deeper, looked harder, and in doing so, often unearthed things she did not intend to find. As Marcus walked, he passed a vendor selling newspapers and magazines. One of the front pages displayed a photo of Victoria from a recent gala, smiling confidently at the camera. The headline praised her leadership and business achievements, painting her as a visionary of the corporate world. Marcus paused briefly, studying the image. Then he continued on, knowing that the public persona she wore so effortlessly was only a fragment of the truth. Back in the office, Victoria's intercom buzzed again. "Ma'am, Daniel has found something. He wants to speak with you right away." Victoria's pulse quickened. She stood and headed toward the security floor, each step echoing with questions she was not ready to confront. The moment she saw Daniel's face, she knew his findings had only deepened the mystery. Victoria stepped into the cybersecurity command room, a dim space lined with monitors displaying flowing data streams and network activity. Daniel Ross stood near the central screen, his posture tense in a way she had rarely seen. When he turned toward her, his expression held both confusion and concern. "I traced the authorization path," he began carefully, "and what I found does not make sense." Victoria folded her arms. "Explain." Daniel tapped a few keys, and a detailed map of access permissions appeared on the screen. Lines connected various systems and user profiles, converging at a single point labeled with Marcus Reed's name. The system did not grant him access through a breach or exploit, Daniel said. It recognized him as an authorized user at the highest clearance level, the level reserved only for you. Victoria blinked, taken aback. "That is impossible. Only I have that clearance." Daniel nodded slowly. "That is what we believed. But according to the logs, Marcus Reed received this clearance 12 months ago." Victoria shook her head. 12 months? He was not even working with us then. Daniel hesitated. His contract shows he worked on 2 maintenance assignments about a year ago, both unremarkable. But the system update granting clearance happened on the exact day he entered the building. Victoria stepped closer to the screen. "Are you saying the system gave him my clearance on its own?" Daniel chose his words cautiously. "Not exactly. It appears the system already recognized him. like he had been in the database before. Victoria felt a chill roll through her. Before what? Daniel exhaled. Before you became CEO. That statement settled over the room with a weight Victoria could not immediately process. She stared at the glowing lines connecting to Marcus's name, her thoughts spiraling. She had taken over Hale Industries after a difficult and highly competitive leadership shift. Only a handful of people had access to the classified systems during that time. If Marcus was somehow tied to those older systems, then this went deeper than she imagined. This is not possible, she whispered. He is a technician. There is no record connecting him to the executive network. Daniel pressed a few more keys. That is the other strange part. His digital footprint stops abruptly 5 years ago. Before that, nothing. After that, only what he allows to appear. Victoria frowned. What do you mean, what he allows? Daniel turned to her with a serious expression. His records are too clean. Cleaner than any standard background check would produce. I think he has been controlling what the system sees. Victoria stared at him, disbelief rising. You are suggesting he manipulated our systems? Daniel hesitated again. If he did so without leaving a single trace. There are only a few people who could manage that. Victoria looked back at the screen, feeling the ground shift beneath her. Who? Daniel's voice softened. People who helped build the original core of Hale Industries' security network. Victoria's breath stilled. The original architects were a small group of top-level engineers who had created the company's security foundation long before her arrival. Most had retired or moved on. A few had gone into private consulting. And one of them, she remembered faintly, had disappeared from the industry entirely. It was the first time she wondered if Marcus Reed was not who he appeared to be at all. Far from the quiet technician she had humiliated earlier, he might have been someone who understood her company better than she did. And worse, someone who might hold answers to secrets she had fought to keep buried. Victoria felt the room tilt slightly as she absorbed Daniel's words. The notion that Marcus Reed might be connected to the original architects of Hale Industries' security infrastructure was something she had never imagined. Those individuals were brilliant minds who had shaped the technological backbone of the corporation long before she stepped into leadership. If Marcus had ties to them, then his presence in her building that morning was anything but accidental. She stepped closer to the glowing screen, narrowing her eyes at the web of authorization paths. Pull every archived file related to the original security team, she instructed. Daniel nodded but hesitated before typing. There is something else you should know. I attempted to trace Marcus through external databases. Employment histories, tax records, professional licenses. Everything is accurate, but there is a pattern. Victoria's gaze sharpened. What pattern? Daniel turned toward her. Every record begins exactly 5 years ago. There is nothing before that. Not a single trace of a digital life. Victoria frowned. People reinvent themselves all the time. Daniel shook his head. Reinvention leaves remnants. Old addresses, forgotten accounts, outdated registrations. Marcus Reed has none. It is as if he started existing 5 years ago. Victoria felt her pulse quicken. Are you saying he assumed a new identity? Daniel answered carefully. If he did it flawlessly. Only someone with deep understanding of digital frameworks could overwrite their past so cleanly. Victoria turned away from the screen and paced slowly across the room. Her shoes clicked lightly on the polished floor, each step echoing her rising frustration. She prided herself on controlling every variable, yet Marcus seemed to be slipping through her grasp like air. Find out if he had any connection to the engineers who built the original network, she said. Especially those who left the company abruptly. Daniel nodded and began typing. The screens shifted as archived records and old directories flickered into view. Several names appeared. Victoria recognized most of them. Retired. Transferred. Consulting. Then one name stood out. An engineer who had been instrumental in designing the earliest security protocols. A man known for his brilliance and secrecy. A man who had vanished from the industry without explanation. Daniel tapped the name. This engineer left no forwarding information. He resigned suddenly, citing personal reasons. No one heard from him again. Victoria studied the screen. What does this have to do with Marcus? Daniel brought up another window and placed both profiles side by side. When the engineer disappeared, his internal signature code remained dormant in the system. It was never fully deleted. The system only uses signature codes for the highest levels of access. Victoria felt the realization settle in her stomach like ice. Are you suggesting Marcus is connected to this engineer? Daniel nodded slowly. Their digital patterns are similar. The way they move through systems, the way they avoid detection, and the timing lines up. The engineer disappeared 5 years ago. Marcus Reed appeared 5 years ago. Victoria's breath caught. You think Marcus is the engineer? Daniel hesitated before answering. If he is not the engineer himself, then he was trained by him. Victoria pressed a hand to her temple. Everything she thought she knew about Marcus was unraveling. He was not a technician who blended into the background. He was someone who had chosen to be unseen. And that frightened her more than the unauthorized access. Because if Marcus had once been part of the team that built the core of Hale Industries' security network, then he knew every hidden door, every vulnerability, and every secret, including Project Orion. And perhaps, she realized with a sinking feeling, he did not just know her darkest secret. He may have been waiting for the perfect moment to confront her with it. Victoria stood silently in the command room as the weight of Daniel's conclusion settled over her. The hum of the machines, the soft clicks of the keyboards, and the blinking lights on the screens all faded into the background as her thoughts narrowed to a single point. If Marcus truly was the missing engineer or someone trained by him, then she had underestimated him to a degree that made her chest tighten. She prided herself on reading people quickly, seeing through their facades, and identifying their value within seconds. But with Marcus, she had only seen what he allowed her to see. And now she feared that the carefully controlled world she had built was beginning to slip out of her hands. She turned to Daniel. Do not alert anyone else about this. Not yet. Daniel nodded. I understand. Victoria took a breath and said, find every piece of data we have on the original engineer. Everything that was archived, deleted, or left incomplete. I need to know exactly who we are dealing with. Daniel hesitated. It may take some time. The old systems were not fully integrated into our current network. Some files may need to be restored manually. Then start restoring them. Victoria replied firmly. I want answers today. As Daniel began pulling up more windows on the screen, Victoria stepped away, moving toward the hallway. She needed space to think, to gather herself before making her next move. Her heels clicked rhythmically against the floor as she walked, each step a reminder that she needed to stay in control. But control felt more fragile than ever. Meanwhile, across the city, Marcus had left the coffee shop and was walking down a quiet residential street lined with trees whose branches swayed gently in the afternoon breeze. The sun dipped lower, casting warm golden light onto the pavement. Marcus stopped beside a modest townhouse and unlocked the door. Inside, the space was neat and minimal, filled with organized shelves and a small desk tucked beside a window. He hung his jacket over the back of a chair and sat down at the desk, opening a laptop that hummed softly to life. A secure communication window appeared on the screen with a blinking cursor. Marcus typed. She discovered the connection. A moment later, a response appeared. That was the intention. Marcus leaned back slightly in his chair. His expression was calm, but beneath that calm was a steady determination shaped by years of quiet preparation. He had watched Hale Industries from the outside for a long time, observing its evolution, its triumphs, and its secrets. He had seen policies change, departments restructure, and data patterns shift. And he had seen Project Orion appear in the system one day, carefully hidden, but not hidden well enough. Now the time had come to confront the truth he had spent years piecing together. Back at the tower, Victoria returned to her office, closing the door behind her with more force than she intended. She sat down slowly, folding her hands on the desk as she considered her next steps. She could not approach Marcus directly without risking exposure. She did not yet know what he wanted or why he had chosen today to reveal himself through the system logs. But she knew one thing for certain. Marcus Reed was no ordinary technician. He was someone with knowledge of the company's deepest architecture, someone with a connection to its past that she had never been told about, someone who understood how to move within her world without leaving a trace. And as she stared out the window at the fading afternoon light, she realized the most troubling part of all. Whatever Marcus planned next, he was already several steps ahead of her. Victoria remained in her office long after the sun dipped below the horizon, the city lights flickering to life in a shimmering pattern beyond the glass. She had spent the past hour reviewing every document connected to Project Orion, searching for anything that might reveal how Marcus had gained access or why he cared about the initiative at all. Yet the more she searched, the more the questions multiplied. She pushed her chair back slowly, feeling an unwelcome sense of vulnerability settling in her chest. For someone accustomed to holding every advantage, the uncertainty gnawed at her. She had risen to power by outsmarting her competitors, by spotting weaknesses before others even sensed danger. But Marcus was different. He moved quietly, predictably unpredictable, as though he had anticipated her every reaction before she made it. She closed her eyes briefly, trying to steady her breath. A gentle knock sounded at the door. Emily stepped in cautiously, holding a neatly organized folder. "Ma'am, you seemed distant earlier, so I brought the latest finance reports. They were due today." Victoria blinked, pulling herself back to the present. "Thank you, Emily. Leave them on the desk." Emily nodded but hesitated, her gaze softening. "If you need anything, or if something is concerning you, I am here to help." Victoria studied her for a moment. Emily was young, earnest, and sincere in a way Victoria rarely saw in her employees. But sincerity did not solve problems of this magnitude. "I appreciate that," Victoria replied, keeping her tone polite yet distant. When Emily left the room, Victoria turned her chair toward the window again. For a brief moment, she wondered what it would feel like to trust someone enough to share her fears. But she dismissed the thought as quickly as it came. Trust had never been her path to success. Meanwhile, across the city, Marcus sat at his small desk, reviewing encrypted files containing data he had spent years assembling. The information was meticulously organized, tracing every hidden layer of Project Orion. Diagrams, internal reports, financial trails, and private conversations were arranged in a way that told a story far different from the one Hale Industries presented publicly. Marcus paused at a particular note written years ago, a reminder to himself. Truth must be revealed responsibly. He understood the gravity of what he carried. He knew the cost of bringing the truth to light could ripple far beyond Victoria Hale's career. But he also knew that ignoring it would come at an even greater price. His phone buzzed again, displaying a new message. "She will not stay passive. Prepare for contact." Marcus set the phone aside, knowing the message was correct. Victoria Hale was not the type to sit quietly when confronted with uncertainty. She would search, question, and test every angle. And eventually, she would come to him. Back in her tower, Victoria reviewed the restored files Daniel had sent to her tablet. She scrolled through old correspondence from the early days of the company, notes from the founding engineers, and fragments of technical logs that had been nearly erased over time. Her eyes stopped on a signature embedded in one of the archived codes. It was subtle, woven into the foundational architecture, almost invisible to anyone who did not know what they were looking for. And yet it matched one she had seen earlier that day. Marcus's signature. The realization sent a chill through her. She set the tablet down carefully and stood, her breath catching slightly. Marcus had not stumbled into her world by accident. He had come with intention, equipped with knowledge she had never expected anyone else to possess. And now, for the first time since she became CEO, she felt like she was no longer steering the course of events, but being pushed toward a confrontation she could no longer avoid. She whispered into the quiet room, not expecting an answer. "What do you want from me, Marcus?" But deep down, she suspected the answer was already written in the secrets she had tried so hard to keep hidden. Victoria stood alone in her office, the city lights shimmering far below as if reminding her of the world she had always believed she controlled. But control now felt like a distant concept, something she could touch only in memory. The revelation of Marcus's signature hidden in the company's foundational code replayed in her mind like an echo she could not silence. It was not an accident. It was not coincidence. It was intention. She pressed her hands against the cool surface of her desk, grounding herself before pulling up a secure communication panel. If she was going to confront this mystery, she needed clarity, and there was only one way to get it. She sent a short message to Daniel. "Prepare a confidential meeting room. No recordings. No assistants." Daniel replied immediately, "Understood. Room will be ready." Victoria closed the panel and stepped into the elevator. As it descended, she found herself adjusting her posture, smoothing her jacket, rehearsing her expression. She needed to appear composed, authoritative and unshaken. Even if inside, the uncertainty gnawed at her. Meanwhile, across the city, Marcus sat in the quiet of his townhouse, reviewing the information on his screen. His gaze drifted toward a small framed photograph on a nearby shelf. The image showed a younger version of himself standing beside a group of engineers, all smiling proudly during the early days of Hale Industries. It was a time before restructuring, before politics seeped into the company's core, before Project Orion twisted its identity. He reached out and touched the frame lightly. He had not forgotten the purpose that brought him back into the company's orbit. And now, everything was moving toward the moment he knew would eventually come. His phone buzzed again. Another message appeared. She is preparing to act. Marcus set the phone aside. Then it is time, he whispered to himself. Back at the tower, the elevator opened to the secure floor where Daniel waited outside a conference room with frosted glass walls. He held a tablet against his chest and looked uneasy. The room is clear, he said. No active recordings. All internal sensors temporarily disabled. Victoria nodded. Thank you. Anything new on Marcus? Daniel hesitated, then said, I traced his network activity over the past few months. He has been incredibly careful, but he has accessed parts of our system with the precision of someone who knows exactly where to look. He is not exploring. He is verifying. Verifying what? Victoria asked. Daniel swallowed. The integrity of Project Orion. He seems to be mapping its development path. Victoria felt a tightness in her chest. He should not know about any of that. Daniel studied her for a moment. Ma'am, if he truly is the original engineer or directly tied to him, then he knows more about the system than anyone currently working here. Victoria nodded, acknowledging what she had been resisting. This ends today. I need to speak with him. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Do you want me to arrange a meeting? Victoria paused before answering. No. If I reach out formally, I lose the advantage. I need to catch him before he prepares another move. She stepped into the quiet conference room, her mind spinning with possibilities. She had two choices: confront Marcus openly and risk revealing her fears, or take a calculated approach and determine his true motives before he revealed them himself. She sat down at the polished table and opened her tablet, pulling up Marcus's contractor profile one more time. The face that stared back at her was calm, deliberate, unreadable. She whispered to the still room, What is your endgame, Marcus? And though no one answered, she sensed the moment drawing closer, as if their paths were no longer moving in parallel but converging, ready for the inevitable confrontation she could no longer avoid. Victoria sat alone in the silent conference room, her fingers tracing the smooth edge of her tablet, while her mind replayed every interaction she had ever had with Marcus, searching for something she might have missed. The room felt too quiet, too still, almost as if it were holding its breath alongside her. She knew she could not delay much longer. If Marcus was moving toward her, then she needed to meet him before he decided the terms of their conversation. She rose from the table, slipping her tablet under her arm, and walked out of the room with a renewed sense of determination. The hallway lights glowed softly overhead as she made her way back toward her office, thinking through the safest way to approach him. She could not send security. That would escalate things. She could not send Daniel. Marcus would see that as an act of suspicion. She needed something natural, something that would not alarm him. As she stepped into her office, her gaze fell upon the maintenance log on her desk, listing the areas Marcus had been scheduled to inspect earlier in the day. One of those areas was the rooftop communication center. It was a restricted zone that only a few technicians were permitted to access, and Marcus had been on the approved list. Victoria stared at the entry, and a thought surfaced. If she went to the rooftop communication center now, there was a high chance Marcus would return there. It was the perfect place for a quiet confrontation, away from cameras, away from her staff, away from the pressure of an audience. She straightened her blazer and left her office, taking the private elevator to the top floor. The doors opened to a dim hallway that led to a locked access door. She scanned her badge, and the lock clicked gently. The rooftop communication center was a wide, open area filled with transmitter arrays, satellite equipment, and maintenance consoles. The cool night air swept across the rooftop, carrying with it the faint scent of the city below. Victoria walked slowly toward the railing, her eyes scanning the space. She was alone. For now. Meanwhile, across town, Marcus closed his laptop and gathered his notes. He could feel the moment approaching. He had not planned to draw Victoria into a direct encounter this soon, but her reactions had accelerated everything. He slipped his notebook into his bag, locked the door of his townhouse, and stepped into the evening air. The city lights flickered in the distance as he made his way toward the subway. He moved with purpose, though without urgency, as if he were simply following a path he had memorized long ago. When he reached the tower that housed Hale Industries, he approached the side entrance that contractors often used. The guard recognized him from the morning and waved him through without question. Marcus rode the service elevator to the top floor, feeling the familiar hum beneath his feet. The doors opened to the same dim hallway Victoria had walked through minutes earlier. As he approached the rooftop access door, he paused, sensing the weight of the moment. He scanned his badge, and the lock clicked softly. The night air greeted him as he stepped onto the rooftop. He saw her immediately. Victoria stood near the far railing, her silhouette framed by the glow of the skyline. She heard the door open and turned, her expression composed, but unmistakably tense. Marcus met her gaze steadily, the quiet confidence she had noticed earlier now unmistakable. For a brief moment, neither of them spoke. The rooftop, the city, and the night seemed to hold them in a suspended stillness. Then Victoria broke the silence, her voice low but deliberate. "Marcus, we need to talk." Marcus stepped forward, stopping a respectful distance away. "I know," he replied calmly. "That is why I came." And in that moment, Victoria realized that whatever truth he carried, whatever purpose had guided him back into her world, this conversation would change everything she thought she knew about her company, her past, and herself. Victoria held Marcus's gaze on the quiet rooftop, feeling the distance between them charged with questions she had tried to avoid for far too long. The steady hum of the city below only amplified the silence stretching between them. The glow of the skyline illuminated Marcus's calm expression, revealing none of the uncertainty she felt rising within her. She took a measured breath and spoke first, keeping her voice controlled. "You have been accessing files that no contractor should even know exist. Files that were never meant to be touched. I want to understand why." Marcus nodded, stepping slightly closer but maintaining the respectful space between them. "You already know the answer, Victoria. You have pieced together enough to realize that I did not come here by accident." Victoria's jaw tightened. "Then explain it to me. All of it." Marcus looked out over the city for a moment, as if gathering the weight of his memories before speaking. 5 years ago, I walked away from Hale Industries. Not because I wanted to disappear, but because I could not be part of what the company was becoming. I was one of the engineers who helped build the core of the security network, a network designed to protect people's data, not bury truths beneath layers of encryption. Victoria's heart skipped. Hearing him confirm what she had suspected sent a ripple of unease through her. If that is true, why return now? Why come back disguised as a technician? Marcus met her eyes again. Because Project Orion changed everything. It was not a project created to improve the company. It was created to conceal something. Something that should never have been hidden. Victoria looked away briefly, gripping the railing as she steadied her breath. "You have no idea what it took to protect this company during that transition. Decisions had to be made." Marcus's voice remained calm but firm. Decisions that cost people their careers. Decisions that removed transparency. Decisions that rewritten financial trails. I spent years uncovering what truly happened beneath the public narrative. Victoria felt a cold tightness in her chest. Marcus continued, "But I did not come here to destroy you, Victoria. If that were my goal, it would have already happened. I came because you deserve to face the truth before anyone else. You needed to understand what Project Orion looks like from the outside." Victoria turned back toward him, her expression wavering between defiance and something more fragile. "And what do you expect me to do with that truth?" Marcus took a slow breath. "You have a choice. You can continue hiding the past, carrying the burden alone, or you can correct what was done, repair the damage, and allow the company to stand on integrity again." She shook her head slightly. "You make it sound simple." "It is not simple," Marcus replied, "but it is necessary." The wind moved gently across the rooftop, rustling a loose sheet of paper Marcus had brought with him. He reached into his bag and pulled out a folder, offering it to her. "This contains everything. The financial inconsistencies, the internal decisions, the altered timelines, and the names of the people who were affected. Victoria hesitated, staring at the folder as though it were heavier than the bag he carried it in. When she finally accepted it, her fingers trembled slightly. Marcus's tone softened. You have the power to fix this. To lead with the honesty people believe you already have. That is why I came back. Victoria looked down at the folder, feeling the truth press against her like a weight she had avoided for years. When she finally looked up, her voice was quieter than before. Why give this responsibility to me? Marcus held her gaze steadily. Because despite everything, I believe you can choose the right path. And sometimes, the person who holds the darkest secret is also the one with the most power to change the story. The rooftop fell silent once more as the city lights flickered around them. Victoria exhaled slowly, clutching the folder to her chest. For the first time in years, she felt the possibility of redemption stirring within her. Marcus stepped back, allowing her space to breathe. And as she stood there beneath the vast night sky, she realized that her next choice would determine not only her future, but the future of everything she had built.